Here's the thing nobody wants to admit about the World Cup. Winning it isn't even the most interesting story it tells. The most interesting story is watching a nation collapse in real time, beautifully, spectacularly, on the biggest stage football has to offer. And that's exactly what we're doing today. I'm ranking the 7 worst curses in World Cup history. Not the biggest losses, not the ugliest scorelines. The curses, the moments where expectation and reality collided so violently that an entire footballing nation had to sit with the wreckage for years. Let me be clear about the criteria, because I know some of you are already typing angrily in the comments. This isn't about who conceded the most goals. It's about proportion, how far the fall was relative to how high they'd been standing. A bad team having a bad tournament isn't a curse. That's just physics. A great team destroying itself from the inside on the world's biggest stage, in front of everyone, that's a curse. That's what earns a spot on this list. So if your country's flag shows up somewhere in the next few minutes, and for some of you, it will, I'd brace yourself now, because I'm not here to be diplomatic. I'm here to tell you exactly why it happened and exactly why it deserved to. Now, before we get into it, let's set the rules, because a list like this only means something if you know exactly what you're being judged against. I don't care about the final scoreline. I care about context. What were you expected to do? What did history ranking and sheer footballing pedigree say should happen? And how far below that line did you actually fall? That gap, that's the only thing that matters here. Every single entry on this list gets one verdict, one word. No hedging, no diplomatic footnotes, no, well, to be fair. Just the truth stated once and left to stand on its own. And I'll say this now because it needs saying before we start. Some of these teams were unlucky. Genuinely. But most of them weren't. Most of them built the conditions for their own collapse, long before a ball was kicked, and what we're about to watch is simply that collapse, playing out on schedule. Let's begin. Number 7, England 2014. My one-word verdict. Predictable. Not catastrophic. Not historic. Just predictable. In the most damning way possible. England arrived in Brazil with a squad built almost entirely on hope, young, talented, and utterly unprepared for the pressure of a group containing Italy and Uruguay. They lost their opener 2-1 to Italy. They lost their second game 2-1 to Uruguay, eliminated with a game still to play for the first time since 1958. A dead rubber draw against Costa Rica did nothing to soften the humiliation. This wasn't a curse born of hubris. It was simply a nation mistaking potential for readiness and paying for it in the only currency that matters at a World Cup: results. Number 6, Italy 2010. One word: embarrassing. Reigning world champions, arriving in South Africa 4 years after lifting the trophy in Berlin, and they couldn't even win a single game. A draw with Paraguay. A draw with New Zealand? Yes, New Zealand. And then a defeat to Slovakia that sent them home bottom of their group, having failed to beat anyone. Marcello Lippi's squad looked exactly like what it was, a team clinging to the ghosts of 2006, with no new ideas and no urgency. Champions don't get to coast, and Italy found out, in the cruelest possible way, exactly what happens when they try. Number 5, Spain 2014. One word: annihilated. This is where it stops being merely disappointing and starts becoming operatic. Spain didn't just lose their opening game to the Netherlands. They were dismantled 5-1 by the very team they'd beaten in the 2010 final. Tiki-taka, the philosophy that had conquered Europe and the world twice over, looked suddenly, brutally obsolete. A follow-up loss to Chile confirmed it. The reigning world champions were out after 2 matches. A dead rubber win over Australia was nothing but a eulogy, dressed up as a football match. The empire didn't decline gracefully. It was executed in front of a global audience in real time. Number 4, France 2010. One word: mutinous. This is where the collapse stops being about football entirely. France drew Uruguay, lost to Mexico, and were already circling the drain. But the real story wasn't the scoreline. It was Nicholas Anelka being sent home for a training ground outburst, and the entire squad responding by refusing to train, on camera, in front of the world's press. The French Football Federation president resigned in disgrace. They finished the tournament with 1 point, bottom of their group, having become less a football team and more a case study in institutional collapse. Some curses are written on the scoreboard. This one was written in open revolt. 4 down, 3 left, and I promise you, they get worse. We're past the point of simple failure now. What comes next isn't bad tournaments. It's national trauma, manufactured live, in real time, in front of everyone. Number 3, Germany 2018. One word: unforgivable. Reigning world champions, defending their crown in Russia with essentially the same core that had lifted the trophy 4 years earlier. And they went home after the group stage for the first time since 1938. They lost their opener to Mexico. They needed a stoppage time winner just to beat Sweden and stay alive. And then, needing only a draw against South Korea to progress. They lost 2-0, with South Korea scoring twice in the dying minutes, while Germany's goalkeeper was upfield, chasing a goal that never came. Joachim Löw's side didn't get unlucky. They got complacent, a champion so convinced of its own inevitability that it forgot to actually defend the throne. The scoreline says group stage exit. The truth says they simply stopped believing they could lose, right up until the moment they did. Number 2, Brazil 2014. One word: unspeakable. You already know what's coming because everyone does. This is the one that needs no introduction, and that's precisely why it hurts so much to say out loud. Brazil hosting the World Cup on home soil, carrying the weight of a nation that measures its own identity through this competition, and they lost their semi-final. 7-1. To Germany, at home. Neymar was injured, Thiago Silva was suspended, and what remained on the pitch simply disintegrated, conceding 5 goals in 18 minutes, in a spell so surreal that commentators around the world ran out of ways to describe it. This wasn't a defeat. It was a collective nervous breakdown broadcast to the entire planet in the one sport where Brazil had never been allowed to be ordinary. Some nations lose football matches. That night, Brazil lost an entire mythology. 1 left, and it isn't close. Everything you've just heard was building to this, because as bad as those collapses were, none of them managed what this one did. None of them turned an entire World Cup campaign into total, deafening silence. Number 1, France 2002. One word: silence. Reigning world champions, reigning European champions. Arguably the most talented squad ever assembled up to that point: Zidane, Henry, Vieira, Trezeguet, Thuram. Favorites to become the first team since Brazil in 1962 to defend the World Cup. And they went home after the group stage, having scored 0 goals. Not one. Across 3 matches. They opened against Senegal, a debutante nation playing in their first ever World Cup, and lost 1-0. Zinedine Zidane, injured before the tournament even began, watched from the sidelines as the champions of the world were beaten by a team that had never played on this stage before. He returned for the second game against Uruguay, but nothing had changed. A goalless draw, and then needing a win against Denmark just to survive. France lost 2-0, and the defending champions were eliminated with a stat line that still sounds invented. Played 3, won none, scored none. This is what separates a bad tournament from a genuine curse. Brazil's collapse was loud. 7 goals, 18 minutes, a nation screaming in real time. France's was the opposite. It was quiet. It was clinical. It was 90 minutes times 3 of the best players on the planet standing on a football pitch and simply producing nothing. No goals, no answers, no explanation that anyone could offer afterward that made any sense at all. Brazil imploded in front of the world. France just stopped existing as a footballing force for 90 minutes, 3 times in a row, at the exact moment the entire planet was watching. That's not misfortune. That's a curse in its purest form, talent rendered completely irrelevant on the one stage where talent is supposed to be the only thing that matters. So there it is. 7 curses, 7 collapses, and one clear truth running underneath all of them. The World Cup doesn't just crown champions, it exposes them too. Every single team on this list walked in believing they were untouchable. Every single one of them found out on the biggest stage in the sport exactly how wrong they were. Now I want to hear where you disagree because I know some of you already do. Maybe you think I've been too harsh on Germany. Maybe you think there's a curse I've left off this list entirely, one that hurt worse than anything you just heard. Tell me. Put it in the comments. Tell me exactly why I've got it wrong, and I promise you, I'll read every single one. And if this is the kind of football history you actually want, the version with no diplomacy, no hedging, just the truth stated plainly, then subscribe, because next time I'm going after something even more contentious, the most overrated World Cup winning squad of all time. Some of you are going to hate who's on that list. Good. I'll see you there.